You think you'd know if the person texting you wasn't really the person texting you. You'd hear it in the words, right? The rhythm would feel off. You just know. For nearly 4 years, an Omaha mechanic named Dave Kroupa thought the same thing. The woman he'd spent one single night with kept sending him messages, angry ones, pleading ones, tens of thousands of them from her phone, her email, her Facebook, her work account. He answered some. He ignored most. He moved, changed numbers, begged her to stop. She never did. And here's the strange, dark, and mysterious part. By the time the very first of those messages hit his phone, the woman he thought was sending them had already been dead for hours. In the spring of 2012, Dave Kroupa packed up a 12-year relationship into the back of a truck and drove to Omaha, Nebraska. He was 30-something, a mechanic, and for the first time since his 20s, he was sleeping in an apartment that belonged only to him. He wasn't looking for anything serious. He had 2 kids with his ex, Amy Flora, and his whole life right then was work, weekends with the kids, and the occasional message on a dating site. The first woman who wrote back was a single mom from Iowa named Shanna Golyar. Everyone called her Liz. Liz was easy. No pressure, no drama, no talk of moving in. They saw each other when it suited them, and Dave was upfront. He was dating other people too, and she said that was fine. So for a few months, that was the shape of his life. Then in the fall, a silver Ford Explorer rolled into the shop where Dave worked. The woman driving it was 37, a computer programmer out of Macedonia, Iowa, with a teenage son and a smile that pretty much ended the conversation. Her name was Cari Farver. They got to talking. They matched on the same dating site a few days later, almost like the universe was nudging them. By early November, Cari was coming over to Dave's apartment for their first real date. And right in the middle of that first date, there was a knock at the door. Liz, unannounced. She said she was just stopping by to pick up some things she'd left at the apartment. The 2 women passed each other in the hallway, one walking in, one walking out, and exchanged maybe 3 polite words. Dave apologized. Cari laughed it off. The night moved on. Now, here's something to hold onto for later. That hallway moment is the only time, as far as anyone can prove, that Cari Farver and Liz Golyar were ever in the same room. Cari stayed over that night, November 12, 2012. In the morning, Dave got up, made coffee, kissed her goodbye, and headed to the shop. Totally normal. He figured he'd text her later that day. Around lunchtime, his phone buzzed. It was Cari. The message asked basically if they could move in together that day. Dave read it twice. They'd been on, a handful of dates. He typed back something gentle, slow down, that's not where I'm at. He hit send and got back to the car he was working on. The phone buzzed again almost immediately, and the woman on the other end of it was not the woman he'd kissed goodbye that morning. The messages turned cruel fast. They called Dave names he hadn't been called since middle school. They told him he was nothing, that he'd ruined her life, that she was going to ruin his right back. By the end of the workday, his phone had buzzed dozens of times. He figured he'd misread her. Maybe she was more invested than he realized. Maybe he'd hurt her feelings worse than he thought. He stopped responding. The messages kept coming anyway, all hours, from her number, and then from numbers he didn't recognize, and then from email addresses that all somehow knew his name. 4 days later in Macedonia, Iowa, Cari's mother Nancy Rainey was getting dressed for a family wedding. Cari had RSVP'd. Cari did not show up. Nancy called and finally drove to Omaha herself. The apartment was empty. The car was gone. On November 16th, Nancy filed a missing person report. And almost as soon as she did, her own phone started lighting up with messages from her daughter. Cari was fine, the text said. Cari had taken a job in Kansas. Cari needed space. Stop looking for me, Mom. Her son got the same kind of messages. So did her cousins. So did her boss. To anyone reading them, Cari Farver had just walked away from her own life. And because the words were coming from her phone, her email, her Facebook, police treated it that way too. She wasn't a missing woman. She was an adult who didn't want to be found. In January, Dave came home from work and saw a silver Ford Explorer parked near his building, Cari's car. He stared at it for a long time. By the time he came back out with his phone, it was gone. The car turned up abandoned not long after. Inside it, her belongings neatly there like she'd just stepped out for gas. Police logged it. The messages kept coming. Through all of this, Liz Golyar stayed in Dave's life. She'd come over. She'd cook. She'd shake her head about that crazy Cari Farver woman and ask if he'd heard from her lately. And then in August of 2013, her house burned down. Her 4 pets died inside. She told police the fire was set on purpose, and she had a pretty good idea who'd done it, that crazy Cari Farver woman. An email from Cari's account showed up shortly afterward bragging about it. So now Liz wasn't just Dave's other girlfriend. She was a fellow victim, a survivor even. 2 more years went by like that. The messages spread out to Dave's ex Amy Flora, to his kids, to co-workers. Tens of thousands of them eventually. Then, in December of 2015, Liz called the police bleeding from a bullet wound in her leg. She said Amy Flora had shot her with Dave's gun. And that was the part that finally didn't add up. 3 investigators across the river in Pottawattamie County, Iowa, Sergeant Jim Doty, Deputy Ryan Avis, and a digital forensics guy named Tony Kava, looked at this woman with her dead pets and her stalker, and now a bullet in her leg, and quietly started to wonder if Liz Golyar was the unluckiest woman in Iowa or something else entirely. Tony Kava started with the messages, all of them. Years of texts, emails, Facebook posts, the kind of mountain that used to make detectives close a file and walk away. He didn't walk away. He pulled warrants for the accounts and started sorting. What he found was almost embarrassing in how clean it was. 45 email accounts, 31 Google, 9 Yahoo, 5 Microsoft, all spun up to impersonate Cari, then Amy, then strangers. Every single one traced back to devices and IP addresses tied to one woman, Liz Golyar. They went looking for the physical stuff next. They pulled Cari's abandoned Explorer back out of evidence and went over it inch by inch. Tucked in the console, a small mint tin with Liz Golyar's fingerprint on it. Under the fabric of the passenger seat, traces of Cari Farver's blood. Now they had her, but they wanted more and they wanted her talking. So Doty and Avis sat across from Liz and did something risky. They played along. They told her, "Look, we believe you. We think Amy Flora is behind all of this. Can you help us build a case on her?" Liz lit up. She wanted to help. Over the following weeks, she forwarded the detectives email after email supposedly from Amy Flora, including a long, detailed confession to stabbing Cari Farver in her own car and burning the body. Every one of those emails, Kava's team traced right back to Liz's own devices. She'd written a murder confession and signed it with the name of the woman she was trying to frame. On December 22, 2016, they arrested her. First-degree murder, second-degree arson. She waived a jury and let Judge Timothy Burns decide, and over 10 days in 2017 he did guilty on both counts, life without parole. And here's the part I still can't quite get my head around. They got that conviction without a body, without a weapon, without a confession that was actually a confession. The Nebraska Supreme Court would later call it a landmark. Overwhelming circumstantial evidence, they wrote, can carry a murder case even when there's nothing left to bury. But there's one more piece of this. Sometime before the trial, Tony Kava was working through the last of the seized devices and pulled an old tablet off a shelf. A tablet Dave Kroupa had owned years earlier, used for a while, and then forgotten about. It had passed through Liz's hands at one point. Kava popped out the memory card and started recovering deleted files. Most of what came back was junk. Screenshots, blurry photos, nothing. And then one image loaded that made the room go very, very quiet. It was a close-up photograph of a human foot, decomposing, and inked into the skin of that foot, clear as the day it was drawn, was Cari Farver's tattoo, the Chinese character for mother. Tony Kava had a forensic pathologist confirm what he was looking at. A human foot. Signs of decomposition consistent with the timeline. The tattoo, an exact match to the one Cari Farver had on her own foot, a small, private tribute to her mom, Nancy. Shanna Golyar had killed Cari, photographed her, saved the picture, and then carried that memory card around in a tablet she eventually let her boyfriend keep. For 4 years, she sent messages in Cari's voice while a photo of Cari's body sat in his junk drawer. Cari Farver has never been found. Her mother, Nancy Rainey, still has the tattoo on her own skin now in the same place in the same character. If this case stayed with you, and honestly, how could it not? Go ahead and subscribe. A new investigation every week. I'll see you on the next one.